know what? How about we just cut to the chase with this one? Welcome to this month's flavor of hyperfixation, Dungeon Boss. Dungeon Boss is a 2014 mobile game I used to love playing about a decade ago when it was new, following the typical freemium structure you'd come to expect from any app on Google Play. But of course, for any freemium game to become beloved, it has to have a fan base of people, including me, who truly believe that bro, it ain't that pay to win, bro, trust. A conversation you always hate to have, but when you love the game, you gotta have it. Unfortunately, at some point my tablet finally aged to the point that the game was unbearably laggy to play, leading to me taking a hiatus from the game, and, well, while I was planning on coming back after a while, I ran into an issue. By the time that I'd moved on, I kinda completely forgot what the name of the game even was. I mean, I'll defend it on many fronts, but I won't defend it on the idea that Dungeon Boss is not a very memorable name. I really was interested in coming back to the game after a year or so, but I just couldn't remember what it was called for the life of me. So after a bit of searching in vain, I eventually just decided, right, I guess I've just lost it. Fine. Back when I did play it though, it was an admirably complex but approachable turn-based RPG, with over 100 different heroes to collect, as well as both a single-player story and PvP versus mode to play. All wrapped up in an adorable 2012 Minecraft animation-like art style. Oh boy does that take me back. And some quite frankly absurdly good sound design and music, probably most reminiscent of Terraria, but even then being pretty unique compared to it. Now hopefully that all sounds pretty good to you, because I think that's the best that I can sell it. The reason I worry about how that pitch will land is you might have the same horrifying realization I did upon returning to this game recently. Wait a minute. If this is a freemium mobile turn-based RPG whose prime feature is the cast of over 100 unique upgradable heroes of varying rarities you obtain randomly from the summoning portal, isn't that a gacha game? And, well, shit. You kinda got me there. I never thought about this game that way before because I'd never even heard the word gacha back in 2015. But I can't lie, maybe in hindsight you would be right. I suppose this technically is a gacha game. I think I have to own up to that. But I mean, is that supposed to make me suddenly turn around and decide I don't like the game anymore? I mean, I hate that I have to do it like this, but in this position, I don't know how else to say it. Yeah, I guess this is a gacha game. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really change the important fact that it doesn't really fall into most of the trappings that negatively polarize people against gacha games. Or in simpler terms, it's a good game. That being said, I'm sure the uninitiated will be confused what the whole respawn thing is about. When I first finally rediscovered Dungeon Boss and remembered its name about 2 years ago, I couldn't play it anymore. It was gone. While I really do love this game, you're gonna have to stick through me doing a lot of whining here for a moment, which will probably surprise no one coming at this video with any previous knowledge of this whole mess. While I was away, it turns out that Netflix of all people completely bought out the entire team behind Dungeon Boss and wants to put the game on Netflix Games. On Netflix Games. Netflix Games. So for those of you who don't know, Netflix in fact do got games on their phone. And in fairness, I'm not actually against the idea, but my problem with it, along with I think most other people, is that the kind of stuff that goes on Netflix Games is usually the kind of App Store slop your middle-aged Facebook mom on level 3273 of Candy Crush plays all day. Now in fairness, I won't tar the entire library with the same brush, especially when I'll readily admit I've only tried a few of them, but even the diamonds in the rough typically also fall into the category of being very casual games with few exceptions. Definitely one or two of these look cool, but the vast majority of this library just looks like slop to me. I'm pretty sure anyone who actually uses Netflix Games only uses it for BTD6. Now this already means that now you need a Netflix account to be able to even play the game, but it doesn't even nearly stop there. When this happened, apparently the developers decided to take this as an opportunity to not only move the game over to Netflix, but actually completely overhaul and remaster it from scratch, using the same assets, but essentially programming an entirely different game to replace it, even if the point was for it to be nearly indistinguishable from the original. I'm gonna be honest, I am dying to know what the thought process is behind this, but I can't find much insight online. Hell, despite doing my research here, I still don't even know if I'm mischaracterizing the situation a little already by simply not being there when it happened. This whole chain of events seems to be pretty poorly documented online. I would like to speculate that the aim of this move was to use the whole remake debacle as an excuse to take some time to get the game running smoother, and maybe put some coding infrastructure in place ahead of time to better support the addition of more ambitious features in the future. But unfortunately, I can't really find any evidence to support either of those ideas. The way that I remember the game before, it generally ran well, but at a couple moments it would have big lag spikes, particularly when an enemy that dropped a lot of loot died, as it would spawn a lot of particles. And to be quite honest, playing Respawned, it's the exact same. The game runs smoothly most of the time, but when a lot of particles drop because you kill the loot goblin, you get another lag spike. So I don't really think they've made the game any more efficient than it was before. That's not to say it runs horribly, it's just the one place that needs smoothing up doesn't seem to have been smoothened up. So I don't think that one really goes anywhere. And in terms of new features, we'll get to that, but the whole problem with Respawn seems to generally be that there's not really a lot new to talk about. When I first started playing Respawn without any special outside information or context, I couldn't even find much evidence that the game was different at all. And yet the removal of multiple features from the original game is still justified by the argument that Respawned is an entirely new game, apparently. That they can't just port the old things over, at least not presumably without undergoing a whole bunch of work. All of this already put a lot of people off, but unfortunately it only gets worse. The real reason people were not happy with this remake was not just because it killed and replaced the original. Not just because it was nearly indistinguishable from the original in what it added to the game, and pretty egregious in the number of features and heroes that didn't make the jump over. Not just because they now had to get a Netflix subscription to play. No, the real nuke that incinerated the player base from the inside out was the revelation that as it was considered a separate game with similar but still different economy and progression systems in place to the original, all progress and all previous account data would be completely wiped, and every single player would have to start over from a completely fresh new account. And there goes the player base. Or so I hear. I mean, I wasn't actually around for any of this when it happened, so don't fully believe me. But yeah, it should be no surprise how much this enraged the player base. This was one of those games that you could spend for years building up your perfect dream team on your maxed out account. So to have for the more dedicated players years of progress wiped without their consent, while also telling them to now pay for a game they were playing for free before, it's no surprise that's gonna leave some people pretty rightfully mad. At least for my part though, I wasn't too bothered. Because, I mean, I was kind of planning on starting afresh anyway. I was gone when all this happened. Not to mention, it's not like if I came back to my old account right now, I'd even remember everything about how the game worked. So overall, I was pretty undeterred. I also was reminded of the fact that my family already has Netflix. I just keep forgetting they do because I use it so little. When I first heard that Dungeon Boss was now on Netflix games, I was like, I can't play it. I genuinely needed a second to piece together, I don't have Netflix. Oh wait, yes I f***ing do. So hey, I can play now. With introductions out of the way, that actually brings us to the point of this video. While it seems you can find most of what you need to know in scanned pieces online, there doesn't seem to be any one all-encompassing place to document the differences between Dungeon Boss the original and Dungeon Boss Respawned. A question I was asking myself constantly when revisiting the game. So that's what I'm going to try and do in this video. Now, of course, I do need you to keep in mind, the original is literally no longer playable, and I'm mostly going off of nearly 10-year-old memories of it. I'm also heavily relying on the wikis for both the original and Respawn to fill in the blanks here. All that to say, to any hardcore fans watching, if I'm wrong at a point, you'll know why, and be welcome to correct me in the comments down below. As well as that, unfortunately, when I say an all-encompassing list of everything different, I more so mean the important points. There's going to be a few specifics that would get so nitty-gritty this would be a 10-hour-long video if I actually went into it all. Not to mention, I bet I would still miss something. But for all intents and purposes, I want this video to cover any amount of information a reasonable person would need to know about the differences. With all that said, let's start with the good. Dungeon Boss Respawned now contains no in-app purchases. Now, the game's money comes from the Netflix subscriptions required to play it. It doesn't need to make money from video game gambling addicts cosplaying as overweight aquatic mammals anymore. This means the removal of many features that most are probably happy to see gone. No more paying to win by buying more gems, you gotta earn them fair and square. No more stamina meter limiting how many story mode levels you can play each day, you can go forever now. No more arena tickets for PvP dungeons either, you can PvP to your heart's content with no end in sight. Lastly, as a result of the removal of these features, many aspects of the game's economy and progression are more forgiving now. Unfortunately, it's tough to give specifics here, especially considering that by my account, the most noticeable difference is in the distribution of Evos and Celestial Evos, very important drops in dungeons that as far as I can tell, we have never known the drop rates of in the case of either the original or Respawned. With absolutely no real statistics to pull from, all I got is gut instinct to go off of. But, as far as I remember it, I am pretty convinced that Respawned is significantly more generous with its Celestial Evo drop rates, though I remain unconvinced that the normal Evo drop rates have changed at all. Never thought I'd see the day I'd be saying this, but in Respawned, I have quite literally never needed to go get more Celestial Evos yet, while ironically constantly needing more regular Evos on multiple occasions despite the fact they're supposed to be more common. All that said though, for as bitterly received as Respawned was in its introduction, doesn't this all sound kinda good? Far more morally defensible monetization system, speedier progression, no limits on playtime in PvE or PvP? Maybe this really is a price worth paying for the complete restart and a loss of a couple features. Well, God, I really don't like saying this because it feels ridiculously nitpicky. I feel like I'm gonna have a hard time convincing any of you guys watching who didn't experience the original of what I'm about to say, but there is one aspect of Respawn's progression which I see as considerably worse. And no joke, while it sounds like nothing more than a quality of life feature, to me specifically, this feature not being here is genuinely probably the single worst thing about Dungeon Boss Respawned. You see, it seems in their quest to eradicate the stamina system of limiting playtime per day, they also removed quick looting. In the original game, throughout the game, you would earn special resources in levels called keys. Keys could be stockpiled and saved up to later be used for quick looting. Quick looting would allow you to reap the rewards of replaying a level you've already completed at the press of a button, rather than having to actually sit down and replay the whole level. All at the cost of only a few keys and the stamina the level would cost to play anyway. You do not understand how crucial this was to progression in the original past the early game. While the stamina system did limit the amount of times you were able to play per day, leveling up increased the amount of stamina that you could hold significantly, until eventually, while you do still have a limit, that limit could reach upwards of 50 levels you could play today before it would run out. Not spending that stamina is wasteful of your resources, but most days you don't want to sit down and play 50 dungeons. So what do? You stockpile keys on the days that you are actively playing, so later when you don't want to play much, but also want to spend all your stamina to make sure you get all your rewards, you can spend those keys on quick fights and make sure you don't miss out on anything without the time sink. This genuinely was kind of a perfect system. The most powerful way to upgrade your heroes in the game and unlock new moves is for you to ascend them, a process which costs Evos. And for the rarer heroes, Celestial Evos, the rarest Evos in the game. These drop in many normal old levels, only with an extremely low drop chance as you might expect. This meant that the most important items in the entire game to hero progression often required you to grind revisiting old dungeons until the Evo you were looking for finally drops. A really boring and time-consuming repetitive process that you have to manually carry out. Quick looting was a necessity to stave off the boredom. Not to mention, it's not like you could AFK the whole game. You had to actively play to earn your right to quick loot, and you could always earn keys playing any level. So that meant that active play didn't have to be replaying old snooze-fest low-level dungeons. You could be earning those keys while playing the new and exciting levels you haven't even tackled yet, and then use them to breeze past the old levels and the grinding that you'd have to do otherwise, so you don't actually have to sit there and actively play the parts of the game that are the most boring and easy. But now, in Respawn, that's just all gone. You want that ascension? You earn it, Tubby. No tricks, no shortcuts, no quick looting. You sit there and you spam replay dungeons on autofight until you get those evos. Now, credit where it's due, evos are a lot less rare now. Like I said earlier, I've actually genuinely not run out of Celestial Evos once yet. The game kinda hands out these once highly coveted resources like candy now. That's all thanks to the new loot goblins, enemies that randomly appear in levels who run away after a turn or two, but if you kill them first will reward you with a stack of cash and a random Celestial Evo. Going off of just pure vibes, it feels like these guys show up 1 in every 10 levels or so, which is very generous, considering the things they drop felt like they showed up in 1 every 1,000 times in the original. In fact, I'm pretty sure like 99% of the Celestial Evos I have earned are just from loot goblins. In fact, it might actually be that the Celestial Evo drop rate is technically the same, it's just that you get so many of your Celestial Evos from loot goblins now rather than levels, that honestly, it probably accounts for like 95% of the Celestial Evos I have earned so far on this account. With all that being said though, while I definitely can't deny Respawn's progression is objectively more forgiving and faster paced, the removal of quick looting really doesn't make it feel that way, dampening the benefits pretty severely. While yeah, you don't have to spam replay old levels over and over again to get Celestials anymore, you do still need normal Evos, and you need a lot of them. They're nowhere near as rare, but they are still random drops, and drops that you need a much larger quantity of than Celestials because they're so much more common. As a result, while you certainly have less grinding to do technically speaking, it doesn't feel like less when you have to do it all manually, multiplying the time wasted by hundreds. For every 1 second button press on the original where you could just quick loot, you now might have to play a 2-minute long level. And sure, it's only 2 minutes because you can absolutely stomp it, but that is still 120 times longer than just hitting quick loot. Ultimately, this results in Respawn having the benefit of allowing the free-to-play player to progress much further in much less time, but with the caveat that they have to put in far more hours, most of which doing far less interesting things than the things they would actually be doing when they were actively playing the original game. I am actually probably among the most extreme examples of this. I have been doing a pretty dull, slow-paced online course for the past few weeks. So I have quite literally been 9 to 5ing this game in the background basically all day every day while getting through my work. As a result, in under 2 weeks, I've already hit level 31 as of writing this part. For reference, level 80 is the absolute maximum, and I'm sure I'll be a higher level by the time you're seeing footage. I've also max ascended 14 heroes, including a legendary hero, and unlocked 56 out of the 76 heroes in the game by this point. So it's safe to say the amount of progress I've actually been able to make in Respawn has been significantly more, it's just, God, is a lot of that progress earned by just mindlessly spamming the retry level button. While my memory is fuzzy, I got to be fair to Respawn and say that this level of progression in such little time through nothing but dedication would be unheard of in the original. But I have to say, the absolute playtime sink is so needless and egregious without quick looting, it leaves me a little unsure of which one I actually prefer. The playtime sinking playstyle this game encourages only becomes more pronounced through the hero stories though. Yet another example of what should have been a simply helpful mechanic to boost player progression with the removal of in-app purchases, kinda having its sweet intentions soured by the aftertaste of tedious mindless grinding for no particular point. I mentioned earlier that this game contains a large selection of heroes, but I haven't actually explained how you get them yet. Well, you either do your dailies, level your account up, or spend gems to earn summons at the summoning circle. Once you pay up, you'll get 10 hero tokens for a random hero, that being the exact amount required to unlock them. Once you have them unlocked, excess tokens are still valuable as they can be spent to earn stars for the hero that boost their stats significantly. That's the primary way you earn hero tokens, but there are a couple other ways. Each level in the story mode will drop a token for a certain hero once per day, and in competitive modes, usually each competitive season they will pick some kind of relatively rare, highly coveted hero to give as a reward in hero tokens for your participation and whatever rank you end up getting at the end of the season. For the most part though, the primary way of earning them is, yes, through the summoning portal. The thing is though, that the amount of tokens required to earn stars exponentially increases as you continue to upgrade them, meaning that you're gonna need to get your hands on a frankly stupid amount of hero tokens to max anyone out. But now, with no more in-app purchases, we gotta find some other way to bring in those tokens. This is where hero stories comes in. The summoning circle still matters because you still need to unlock the hero in the first place before you can begin their story, but otherwise, stories kind of provide a much more effective method of getting the tokens to star up your heroes for absolutely free. Free if you don't consider your own time to be a valuable resource. They're essentially quests to complete whilst playing levels that reward you with more tokens for the corresponding hero. And unfortunately, they are very grindy. I'm oversimplifying a little here, but every hero's story missions basically go like this. Story 1. Beat 5 levels using this hero to get 10 tokens for them. Story 2. Beat 30 levels using this hero to get 30 tokens for them. Story 3. Beat 40 levels using this hero to get 60 tokens for them. Story 4. Beat 65 levels using this hero to get 100 tokens. And Story 5. Beat 100 levels using this hero to get 150 tokens. I should mention, when I say that I'm oversimplifying a little, I'm kind of completely leaving out bonus requirements. So some of these are going to take even more than 100 levels being beat for them to be finished. You can probably see why this is just tedious. I mean, don't get me wrong, these work. And I'm not saying the game would be better if they weren't here. It's just, like, come on. You couldn't have made this just a little bit more interesting? Just imagine if you replaced these stupid grindy side quests with super difficult special levels designed intentionally to show off the special skills of the unique hero they're bound to. Especially considering a lot of heroes are granted a lot of niche passives that probably don't see a whole lot of use, you could definitely make some really cool special levels that are borderline impossible without abusing the niche utility of your hero. Whether it be Agnon's tank-busting, armor-piercing abilities, Serenity's buff-denying null magic, or Craw's debuff-denying foresight, you could definitely make a lot of special levels that would be borderline impossible without the very special niche mechanics of the characters they're designed around. This would allow them to essentially act like cool challenges and new gameplay for the game, but also kind of cool tutorials that teach you how to use the hero at a more advanced level and get more use out of their special properties. It really is a shame that's not what we get, but making matters worse, rarer heroes have extra requirements to tackle their stories. For example, if I'm using a legendary ancient hero and I want to start their second story, oops, I'm not allowed. It says that I need to have completed story 2 on at least 2 other ancient heroes before you can start their story 2. Due to the obscurity of some of these tags alongside the removal of many of the heroes that used to have them, oftentimes these requirements are literally impossible to meet without just unlocking more heroes by getting more summons. That's all not even mentioning the fact that you'll be completing stories for characters you're literally never going to use, just for the sake of unlocking the stories for the characters you actually will be using. Oh yeah, I am so excited that I completed story 2 for Bovis Eldoro. Can I please get back to leveling up my Phoenix now? For all my complaints about hero progression though, I have to give my compliments to the rank progression system, which was, in fairness, severely upgraded in this remake. In the original, getting to play ranked PvP with any chance of winning was a privilege, not a right. You would be in a kind of constant cycle of grinding to get stronger, playing some ranked PvP to try out your new toys, and actually winning for a while, and that'd be when the game was the most fun. Until you rank up. Get matched against severely over-leveled players you have an insurmountable and purely statistical disadvantage versus, and end up getting saddled with multiple consecutive scripted losses you literally cannot strategize around because the problem is you haven't spent enough money or time on the game to win. As you can tell, PvP was frustrating in the original game. It was where the game was at its best when you could actually play it, but that was the problem. If you weren't paying to keep up, you weren't welcome here. And while free-to-play players could find a place in the top ranks of the arena, you would have to damn well earn it. My fondest memories of this game as a free-to-play player are definitely from the point at which I got my Dwarf Synergy team up and running, all maxed out with their epics and souped-up runes, because that was the point at which I felt I finally had the hands to go toe-to-toe with the other whales in the arena who paid their way to a maxed-out Dragon Synergy defense. Even then, that took me until level 60 to get up and running, and I still only really had the one team to try and use competitively, and even then I was still playing with a disadvantage, just a disadvantage that actually could be overcome in most cases through skill. In Respawn though, I gotta admit, it's a completely different story. I managed to hit the maximum possible rank in the game of Legend 1 on my first competitive season as a level 25 account. It seems that this is quite simply thanks to the fact that the game actually matchmakes based on both rank and level now. If I'm in Legend as a level 25 account, it's not just going to throw a level 80 guy at me and say, yeah, good luck, lol. It might throw a level 30 guy at me or something, or maybe 32. I mean, it's still going to throw me a bit of a hardball, because this is the top ranks, that's what you gotta expect. But ultimately, it's not going to throw something at me you literally just can't outplay. In fairness, I think the original had some form of level scaling in place with the matchmaking, but it definitely didn't feel like it. If anything, maybe the only critique to be had here is you could argue it's maybe a little too forgiving now. But honestly, I would take this system any day over the old system. Another benefit is that while in the old game, I felt tethered to full committing to investment in Dwarf Synergy to remain competitive. But in Respawn, thanks to resources just being a lot more plentiful, I feel more than able to spread out and try investing in multiple different heroes for multiple different strategies, rather than having to hard commit to one strategy and never try anything different. Experimentation and variety is really what keeps the game fun, and having the more forgiving progression of Respawn definitely enables it far more than the original did. So on the PvP front, I've got to admit, I just have no complaints. 10 out of 10. Significant improvement over the original, and definitely the highlight of Respawn as a remake. All that being said though, I think I've gone long enough without addressing the elephant in the room. The removed content. Let's start with the obvious. Heroes. Dungeon Boss had 110 heroes. Respawn has 76. That is because Respawn removed a total of 35 heroes and added 1. Oof. That stinks. And now, for a moment of silence, for the heroes we've lost. Alexandros, Balor, Crucible, Dagrund Blacksmoke, Deadeye, Drak the Warlord, Emperor Zulkard, General Krex, Hansuke the Undying, Harbinger the Terror, Indigo, Jibber Clenchjaw, Julius, Jumbo, Kozar Bonebreaker, Leonidas, Lumen the Radiant, Lupina, Malice, Manglejaw, Overlord Executum, Pigneus Maximus, Rocky the Shiitake! Samurai Takumi, Sifu Zhanzi, Sun Wukong, Theran Fiddlestrom, Sume, Underlord Thrax, Undyne. Wait, yeah, Undyne. Didn't know she was in this game. Viperia, Vulcan, Yanluo, Zola, and of course, who could forget everyone's favorite character, Zerk. Whew, okay. That's a lot. But defenders of Respawn will point out that most of the characters removed were kind of filler characters anyway, which is kind of fair. Out of this list, I only actively noticed the absence of 4 of them. Dagrund, Yanluo, Sun Wukong, and, I mean, come on, who could ever forget Rocky the Shiitake? Now in fairness, once I looked them up, I recognised many of the others that had been removed, but I wouldn't have noticed their absence otherwise, honestly. Many of the removed characters are either reskins of other characters that didn't get removed, or a relatively underutilized component of a certain Synergy's package. But there are a couple baffling exceptions. While Theron Fiddlestrom was a fine but often outclassed dwarf that rarely made the cut in most Dwarf Synergy teams, Dagrun Blacksmoke was the only dwarven healer option, while also being home to some of the most important moves for the Synergy to function. So they seem a much more confusing option to be left excluded. Especially when dwarves like Hagrim Fellhorn somehow dodged the draft into the war for existence. That being said, I would concede that at least many of these characters didn't have all too much to offer. I guess it kind of stings that there are only 4 goblins in the game now, so every goblin Synergy team is going to be the same 4 characters. It's a shame that demon Synergy teams just lost their only tank option, as well as constructs. A lot of these are just, that Synergy lost a little something. That's a shame. But But I'll admit, usually what they lost wasn't like crucial, it was just kinda nice to have. As well as that, while I wish I could provide more insight here, I should make clear that the game was severely rebalanced, leading to significant moveset reworks for the majority of the cast as far as I can tell. It's way too much to cover, and I guarantee you I'd miss something if I tried. But by pure vibes, I'd say the game does feel better balanced as a result. You could certainly argue the rebalancing in itself is more removed content. That might sound a bit ridiculous when I say it like that, but here's a good example. One of the more notable decisions was the complete removal of chaos-type damage, a mechanic similar to Almighty in the Persona games, in that its whole gimmick was that it was impossible to mitigate. It ignored damage reduction effects, elemental resistances, and even invincibility. While some may be sad to see it go, to my admittedly untrained eye, it seemed a necessary decision. My hazy memory seems to think that chaos damage kinda ran the entire game back in the past, and the fact that they then had to introduce chaos damage resistance mechanics, as well as characters that seem to exist for almost no other purpose than granting chaos damage resistance, looks to back that assumption up pretty strongly. Overall, if Respawn had actually managed to produce a steady but consistent stream of new and returning heroes over the course of its life, I would say that complaints about the removal of these old heroes would be mostly nitpicks. The problem is, it hasn't. It's had just over 2 years, and we still only have Wrath as the only new hero since the remake launched in 2023. He's kind of boring. Like, he's not that bad, but I feel like they could do something a bit cooler for the debut character for the remake of the game. But so far, all we've been talking about are removed mechanics, not entire systems. And yes, there were a couple entire systems of the game removed in Respawned. That being said, giving credit where it's due, one of them was recently reintroduced just a couple months before I started playing apparently. That being runes. You see, I'm very mixed about the reintroduction of runes, because while I think it would be terrible to completely remove them, because they were a big part of the original game and they added a lot of complexity to the game, they also added the vast majority of the game's frustrations, because I would say that runes were the single most pay-to-win feature of Dungeon Boss, the original. They seem pretty innocent at first. Every character in the game gets 5 rune slots of different elements, and you can only equip runes with the matching element to those slots. Once you reach player level 20, you would start getting runes as random drops in levels. And these runes would have names that didn't really make it clear what they would do, but would give you a vague indication of the kind of benefits you'd get if you continued to upgrade them. Runes followed both a rarity and a star system, where every single rune that you would find dropping in a level would drop at 1 star, but could be upgraded using gems to increase the amount of stars on them and increase the stat boost. This is kind of annoying considering that gems were the premium currency, and this is the only mechanic in the game I can think of where you had to use gems to upgrade something rather than just normal money, but at the very least, the actual drops of the runes themselves were free, you just had to earn them. Now that being said, obviously the best of the best runes were going to be very, very, very rare, and so if you wanted to get your hands on some good ones, one of the best methods was the tuning system. Now I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I only like 3/4 understood the system even back in the day, and now it's been ages since I played this game. So I'm not going to pretend that I can explain the whole system in depth right now. But long story short, you used to be able to get crafting materials as a random drop in levels, and those crafting materials could be used for a couple things, one of which being rune tuning, which was a process you could recursively spend resources on to increase the chances of getting a higher rarity, more powerful rune out of the runes you were getting. Especially considering you get way more weak runes you probably never want to use, they even help you out by making it so that salvaging runes you won't use gives you crafting materials and money to make better runes. All this so far might not sound so bad, but let's start explaining why runes were a problem. Ultimately, what runes did was just boost your stats, and better runes would boost your stats even more. What this meant is that you could have situations in PvP where you could go up against someone and the fight could feel basically impossible for you, just because they have such souped up runes that even if you're both the same level, their stats are through the roof and yours suck. And while technically you could check the runes that someone had equipped before a fight, considering that every single character on their team has 5 runes equipped, it would take forever to actually check every single rune that the enemy had on deck for every single fight. Not to mention, maybe some players didn't even know they could check that. So it leads to a lot of situations where you'd think you'd be going into a winnable fight, only to realize you aren't, because as weak as this guy's team looks, he's got the most broken rune in the game on his heroes. What was worse though, is you didn't just have runes that boosted 1 stat, or 2 stats, or even 3 stats. Eventually, when you got to the best of the best, you'd have runes that would boost 3 stats simultaneously to a significant degree, and then also grant heroes entirely new passive abilities. Conceptually, this is really cool if it was something that everyone could equally take advantage of. But, predictably, this was the kind of thing that was so expensive and so luck-based to pursue that it was basically unattainable for most free-to-play players, meaning this mechanic is practically only abusable by pay-to-win players. And some of these passives were insanely powerful. In particular, probably to no one's surprise, at least from what I remember, the main coveted ones was the passive that converted your damage to chaos damage so that nothing could resist the damage you were dealing, and the passive which granted you chaos damage resistance. Yeah, chaos damage really was a problem. But there were also passives that granted lifesteal to characters that could never get it otherwise, made it so that characters' attacks always set people on fire, a whole manner of absolutely insane abilities to be able to grant to any character in the game. Maybe if you were limited to only one of these it wouldn't be a problem, but remember, you have 5 slots for these things. So just to put you in the free-to-play player's shoes, you did have the option of trying to use the resources that you actually got for free in the game to make runes. It wasn't literally impossible for you to get a good rune. But here's the problem. You're a free-to-play player, so let's be real. You don't have all the characters in the game yet. You could be spending those gems on more spins at the Heroic Portal to actually get more characters. And the amount of upgrades that those runes need and the amount of gems that costs, let alone all the cost involved in just creating the rune in the first place, already means that you're usually denying yourself quite a few extra characters in your repertoire just to be able to get runes. But that alone wouldn't really be a strong enough argument, I think, because in fairness, I think you could fairly say that if you are being a sweaty tryhard while being a free-to-play player, it's more effective to just hard focus on upgrading your A-team rather than to spread all your resources thin across the entire cast of characters. So hey, maybe it really is worth it to go get some super expensive runes, even if it means you'll get way less characters. But even then, there's the issue of evos. If you want to hard focus one A-team, you better hope that you're picking some of the strongest characters available to you in your repertoire. And the more rare characters that you own are going to take more evos and more celestial evos to actually, ascend. And I would say ascending characters is the single most important way to progress them. So in many cases, you're forgoing ascensions on your heroes to get runes as well. So already, you're sacrificing the opportunity to get more new characters, and you're sacrificing the opportunity to get new moves and capabilities on the characters you do have. But here comes the worst part. What if you then spend all those resources on that big souped up rune, and by complete pure random chance, you get garbage? Even if you did the maximum amount of tuning, there was still a small chance you wouldn't even get a legendary rune out of it. Not to mention, you could get a legendary rune with one of the much less useful passive abilities that you don't have any use for. And then you might have the most expensive and useless rune in the game on your hands. If you are a pay-to-win player, you probably have the resources to spin multiple times at getting a good rune. And so if you don't get what you want first time, it's not the end of the world. But if you were a free-to-play player, you would have to grind for weeks for one shot at a half-decent rune, and then you might just get garbage, and that would be devastating to you. And then after you get garbage, you then have to go into some PvP anyway, and face a guy who has a 6-star fully ascended maxed out Niveus with 5 legendary runes that are all 5-star equipped to it, that in total grant the Niveus 5 Nivillion extra attack, defense, and skill, all while granting them lifesteal, burning attacks, amping their chaos damage, and granting them chaos damage resistance. Meanwhile, you have a Rogar Stonecrusher with a rune that grants him plus 12 attack. Good luck. Yeah, you get the idea. Runes felt so frustrating to go against, and were definitely the most pay-to-win aspect of the game, I would say. Which is why I'm kind of mixed about the state of them in Dungeon Boss Respawned. Because I will say this, runes definitely feel much less intrusive, and much less of a burden on the gameplay here, and that is great. But the reason they do is because they also feel kind of pointless right now. And the reason why they feel so useless is because they changed the way the system works. You see, the tuning system from before is completely removed. And to obtain a rune, you now just have to get it as a random drop in a level. As well as that, runes just now say the stat that they buff rather than having any ambiguity or randomness to it. And there's now a very clear and solid system where bronze runes buff 1 stat, silver runes buff 2 stats, gold runes buff 3, and legendary runes buff 3 plus give you a passive. The problem is they decided to not just add these as different rarities of runes that can drop in levels, but also add some extra gatekeeping in there. As long as I remember correctly, in the original, once you got to level 20, you could obtain any rune you wanted. Like, there was a lot of luck involved, and you probably wouldn't get great stuff until later, but there was no reason you couldn't get some amazing 5-star legendary rune the second you unlock them. However, in Respawned, it's different. In Respawned, you actually can only get bronze runes when you first unlock them. You have to wait until level 40 to unlock the ability to even drop silver runes in levels. Then 60 to get gold, and yes, level 80 to get legendary. And as a reminder, yes, 80 is the maximum player level in the game. You have to hit the level cap to even start using any of the runes that actually do things other than buff your stats. This is just more to be mixed about, because on one hand, you don't have to deal with that garbage until you're level 80. And once you are level 80, now you're all playing on the same playing field. But on the other hand, my god, this is like the only thing that makes runes interesting, the fact that they can give these new passives that actually change the way characters play. And now they've gatekept that behind hitting the level cap. I mean, I guess I can't tell you from experience, at least in Respawned. I did hit the level cap back in the original, but I don't remember how long it took, just that it took a while, obviously. Either way, I think it's pretty safe to say that maybe having to wait to hit the level cap to use the only feature of runes that I think anyone finds interesting is a little bit ridiculous. So yeah, overall the whole situation with runes leaves me a bit torn, because of the fact that I did think they were very unhealthy for the game, so the fact that they feel invisible to me now does kind of feel like an upgrade. But it also kind of feels like, well, what was the point then? You know, if the only way we could make this mechanic feel better is to make it feel so watered down and irrelevant to the point where you don't even notice it's there anymore, what was the point of reintroducing it? Maybe that's a little harsh, and maybe I'll change my tune when I actually hit level 80 and can start actually engaging with the new system. But for now, yeah, I can't say I'm all too excited about the current state of runes. But all this finally leads us to something I am a fan of. Epics. In its current state, this is the way that hero progression works in Dungeon Boss Respawned. You can gain XP for heroes to level them up and increase their stats. However, your hero's levels can never exceed your player level. When your hero levels up, they unlock the ability to buy further upgrades which increase the damage and healing output of their moves. They can also get stars from hero tokens to provide an increasing percentage boost to their stats, but this tends to take a long time. They can also equip upgradable runes, but until level 80, they're nothing but stats. You might notice that a lot of this really is just stats. The point I'm getting at here is that Ascensions have always been the one area that keeps things interesting with hero progression. Not just upgrading your stats, but actually unlocking new capabilities for them. Newly unlocked heroes come packaged with a single target basic attack, which in most cases is nothing special, and a single special attack with a cooldown. Upon their first ascension, they will then gain a second special move, as well as 1 or 2 bonus passive abilities to add on. And then for the second ascension, they can get themselves up to a total of 4 moves, alongside a slew of even more cool passives to play with. In Respawned, however, this is where the story ends. 1 basic attack, 3 special moves, and a pile of passives of varying quality. Some characters get cool enough passives that this feels plenty, but some characters get bland passives that leave them wanting for more. In the original, this is where epics would come in. You could use the valuable crafting materials dropped in dungeons to create that hero's ultimate weapon once they were fully ascended, effectively acting as their third and final ascension. This ultimate weapon would not only significantly improve their damage output, but also upgrade their basic attack in some way to grant it some sort of special effect, so that it wasn't just a boring old hit with no flair or gimmicks. For some, their epic even upgraded their previous passive abilities into even more powerful passive abilities with brand new mechanics. For example, Dagon the Dwarf's epic weapon was one of those weapons which would upgrade a passive of his. He had the ability to grant dwarves partial damage penetration through damage resistance, and obtaining his epic allowed you to upgrade that passive to also provide a 10% damage boost to dwarves only the boost wouldn't be dealt as normal damage, but chaos damage, the type of damage that can circumvent all forms of damage resistance, as well as even invincibility effects. So yes, the passive was still in the same spirit, but it was doing something completely new on top of that, while making it stronger. I think it's fair to say, epics were cool. They were tough but satisfying to earn. They were a marvel to watch at work, and they really helped put the finishing touches on the kits of characters that were just lacking a little something. And they are just gone in Respawned. That stings. I'm a little concerned too, truth be told. While the reintroduction of runes tells me that epics will be coming back soon enough, and the epic menu does still exist in the game, further indicating that, already in the original game, not every character had an epic to unlock. They were added over time in updates, and while most got one, some would get the short end of the stick and just never get one. Their ascension screen would forever say that they are yet to discover their epic. My point here is that when epics finally do get added back into the game, who's to say that everyone will get one? There's a good chance they may relaunch with only 8, maybe 10 of the 76 heroes in the game actually getting one. Don't get me wrong, that's far better than them never returning, but it does mean, given the slow progress on the updates front, I wouldn't hold your breath on ever seeing half of this roster getting the epics they deserve, unfortunately. So, that's Dungeon Boss Respawned. Should you play it? Well, yeah. Listen, I know I did my fair share of moaning, but ultimately, I like the game. If you already do have Netflix, which many of you do, it's literally free and now with no in-app purchases. If you like what you see, you don't really have a reason not to play. And I can tell you, I still very much enjoy the game. As well as that, as much as the grinding has certainly dragged down the hype I feel about rediscovering the game, that doesn't change the fact that when I actually take a moment to stop and smell the roses, to turn off auto-fight and actually actively play the game on some harder dungeons and challenges, I end up really enjoying myself. And while I am a little concerned to learn that Respawn has only achieved this much, given over 2 years of time to do it, so long as the game isn't just getting the plug pulled on it and continues to receive updates, I think Respawn definitely has the potential to easily outshine the original with just a few more missing features added back in. Epics and quick looting alone would do a hell of a lot for the game. And at least showing some signs of life on the front of adding new heroes, or at least bringing back old ones, would certainly help a lot too. All that being said, I don't really have much of a grand point to end this video on, in all honesty. I'm just hoping this video can foster some appreciation, or at least interest for a game I'm really hoping can pull through these hard times. With all that said, well, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, remember to subscribe, comment down below, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.